The jet touched down just as dawn broke over the horizon. The sky glowed faintly gold, streaked with silver clouds. Ethan Cole, one of the wealthiest men in the city, leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes for the first time in 12 hours. He wasn't supposed to be home yet. His board thought he was still in London finalizing a merger. His staff believed he'd return next week. And his household, including his live-in maid, had no idea he was only a few miles away. That secrecy was deliberate. For weeks, Ethan had felt an ache gnawing at the back of his mind. Something unsettling, something off. It wasn't business. His empire was thriving. It wasn't money. He had more than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. It was home. His wife had died 2 years ago in a car crash, leaving him alone with 3 children. Beautiful triplets, barely 5 years old when she passed. After her death, Ethan buried himself in work, escaping the memories of laughter that used to echo through the halls of his mansion. The triplets were cared for by Maria, their full-time maid and nanny, a quiet, soft-spoken woman who had joined the family shortly before tragedy struck. Maria had been everything the children needed: patient, gentle, kind. Ethan trusted her completely, maybe too completely. But lately, strange things had reached his ears. A few offhand remarks from his staff, a whispered conversation he wasn't meant to overhear. Someone had said Maria was getting too attached. Another had said she treated those kids like they were hers. He didn't want to believe gossip. But curiosity, or perhaps guilt, had brought him home early. The car pulled up to the mansion's tall iron gates. Ethan watched as they opened slowly, creaking against the morning wind. The driver glanced back. "Will you be announcing your arrival, sir?" Ethan shook his head. "No, not yet." He wanted to see the truth as it was and unfiltered, unprepared. As they neared the house, Ethan's chest tightened. The mansion looked as immaculate as ever. White marble, tall columns, trimmed hedges. But it felt different. It was no longer the house where his wife laughed, where the twins played under her watchful eye. It was sterile. Cold. He stepped out, dismissing the driver, and walked quietly to the front door. The security system recognized him instantly, the lock clicking open with a faint chime. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lavender and pancakes. A sound drifted through the hall. Children's laughter. He froze. It was the first time in months he'd heard them sound so alive. He followed the laughter toward the living room, careful not to make a sound. And then he saw it. The grand living room had been transformed into something completely unrecognizable. The expensive Persian rug was gone, replaced by colorful foam mats. The elegant glass coffee table was pushed aside, covered with crayons, storybooks, and cereal bowls. The children, his triplets, were sitting cross-legged on the floor, faces painted like superheroes, giggling uncontrollably as Maria knelt beside them holding a paper crown. She was laughing, too. A deep, genuine laugh that filled the room like sunlight. Her long hair was tied back messily. A streak of blue paint smudged across her cheek. Ethan stood there silently, watching the scene unfold. "Okay, princes and princess," Maria declared, pretending to adjust her invisible cape. "Who wants to be King Pancake? I do," shouted little Noah, jumping up and waving a wooden spoon. "No, me," cried Ava, her twin sister. Maria gasped dramatically. "A duel, then. To the Royal Pancake Arena." The children squealed, charging toward the kitchen. Maria chased after them, barefoot and laughing, her apron fluttering like a flag. Ethan couldn't help it. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. It had been so long since he'd seen his children this happy. But the smile quickly faded when he noticed something else. On the mantel above the fireplace where his late wife's photo once stood, there was now a new picture, one of Maria with the triplets. She was holding them in her arms, all of them beaming, the photo clearly recent. His stomach twisted. He took a step forward, staring at the photograph. The placement wasn't subtle. It was where his wife's picture had always been. He swallowed hard, emotions colliding inside him. Anger, confusion, pain. Was Maria trying to replace her? He turned sharply as the sound of footsteps approached. Maria froze in the doorway, still holding a spatula. eyes widening as she saw him. "Mr. Cole?" she breathed. He said nothing at first. The triplets, oblivious, squealed and ran toward him. "Daddy!" Ava cried, throwing her arms around his leg. "You're home!" Ethan dropped to one knee, hugging all three children tightly. They smelled of pancakes and paint. For a moment his heart softened. "I missed you," he murmured, kissing their heads. "We missed you too," Noah grinned. "Maria made pancakes and said we could play kings." He smiled faintly. "Did she?" Maria stood frozen, unsure what to say. Her face was pale, her hands trembling. When the children dashed back to the kitchen, Ethan rose slowly. Turning to her, "I wasn't supposed to be back until next week," he said quietly. "I know, sir," she said softly. "I didn't expect—" "I can see that." His tone was calm, but the edge in it was sharp enough to cut. She lowered her eyes. "The children wanted to—" "I'm not talking about the pancakes," he interrupted. "I'm talking about that." He pointed to the photograph. Maria's face drained of color. "Sir, what is this?" His voice rose, restrained but dangerous. "Why is your picture up there?" "Where my wife's used to be?" Maria opened her mouth, but no words came. He stepped closer. "Did you think I wouldn't notice? That I wouldn't care?" Tears welled in her eyes. "It's not what you think." "Then explain it to me," he demanded. She took a shaky breath. "The children put it there. I didn't want to take your wife's photo down. I never could." "But they what?" He pressed. "They said it made them sad to see her picture there when you were gone all the time," she whispered. "They missed you, sir. They missed both of you." Her voice broke. "They wanted a family picture, with the only people who make them feel safe now." Ethan's anger faltered for just a second. He looked back at the photo. The children's faces glowed with joy, something he hadn't seen in a long time. Still, the wound was open. "You should have told me," he said quietly. "You weren't here to tell," she whispered. He stared at her, torn between gratitude and fury. "I trusted you with my children, Maria. I pay you more than anyone in this house because I believed you understood boundaries." "I do," she said softly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I love those kids, but not the way you think. I would never." "Then why does it look like you've replaced their mother?" He cut in. She flinched, her lips trembling. "Because no one else did." The words hit him like a punch to the chest. He stared at her. This woman who had raised his children, fed them, comforted them, laughed with them, while he drowned himself in work to forget his own pain. She wiped her tears, voice breaking. "You think I wanted this? To become the one they run to when they wake up crying for her? To see them ask every night if their mommy is coming back? I didn't replace her, Mr. Cole. I just couldn't let them feel alone." Ethan's breath caught. For the first time he saw it. Not defiance. Not ambition, but exhaustion and love. The kind he'd forgotten existed. Still, pride kept him silent. "Clean up the mess," he said finally, his voice low but unsteady. "We'll discuss this later." Maria nodded, tears sliding silently down her face as he walked away. The triplets ran past him again, laughing, holding paper crowns. "Daddy, Maria's the best queen ever," Ava shouted proudly.
"She said moms are like queens who take care of everyone."
Ethan froze mid-step. He turned slightly, just enough to see Maria kneeling to tie Noah's shoelace, smiling through her tears, and for a moment, the billionaire, the man who thought he had seen everything, realized that maybe he had never truly seen it all. The air in the mansion felt heavier that evening. The laughter that had filled it that morning was gone, replaced by the faint hum of the rain and the quiet tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. Ethan Cole sat in his study, staring at the empty fireplace. The flames he'd lit an hour ago had already died, leaving behind glowing embers and cold silence. His thoughts kept circling back to that image. Maria, barefoot and laughing with his children, the photograph on the mantel, the words she'd said, "because no one else did." He poured himself a glass of whiskey but didn't drink it. He wasn't angry anymore, not exactly. What he felt was harder to name. Guilt, shame, maybe fear. For years he'd hidden behind the walls of his work, telling himself it was for the children, that money could fill the gap love had left behind. But Maria had filled that gap instead, not out of ambition, not out of greed, but out of love, and that scared him more than anything. A soft knock at the door pulled him out of his thoughts. "Come in," he said. The door creaked open. Maria stepped in quietly, wearing her uniform again, neat, proper, distant. Her hair was tied up and her eyes were red but calm. "Sir?" she said softly. "The children are asleep." He nodded without looking at her. "Good." An awkward silence followed. The kind that presses against your chest until it hurts. "About earlier," she began carefully. "I'm sorry you had to see things that way. It wasn't meant to upset you." He leaned back in his chair. "It didn't upset me, Maria. It shocked me." Her hands tightened nervously around the edge of her apron. "I understand. Do you?" He finally looked up at her. "Do you understand what it's like to walk into your own home and feel like a stranger?" Her gaze softened. "Yes, sir," she whispered. "More than you think." Something in her tone made him pause. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit," she hesitated. "I'd rather stand." "That wasn't a request," he said quietly. Slowly, she sat down. He studied her, really studied her, for the first time since his wife's funeral. She looked tired, older maybe, but her eyes, they held something pure. "Tell me," he said finally, "why are you still here?" She frowned slightly. "Because this is my job." "No, Maria," he said, shaking his head. "You could have left long ago. You could have taken another position anywhere. But you didn't. Why?" Her lips trembled before she spoke. "Because they needed me." "The children?" "Yes," he leaned forward. "And what about me?" She blinked, caught off guard. "You?" "Yes," he said, his voice soft but pointed. "Did you ever think I might have needed someone too?" Maria looked down. "I did, every day. But you never asked." He sat back, her words cutting deep. "So that's it? You decided to step in? To play the part of the parent I wasn't?" "No," she said quickly. "I didn't step in, I stayed." "There's a difference." He frowned. "Explain." Her voice steadied. "When your wife passed, you didn't eat for days. You didn't speak to anyone. You locked yourself in this room, drowning in your grief, and I understood. I didn't judge. But those children, they cried every night calling for their mother. I couldn't walk away from that. I couldn't leave them empty." He swallowed hard. "And so you filled the silence." "Yes," she whispered. "Because someone had to." Her honesty stung. He looked away, staring at the rain streaking down the window. "You crossed a line, Maria. You made choices about my family without my permission." "I did," she admitted quietly. "But only because you stopped making them." The words hung in the air, sharp and devastating. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. She was right. And the truth of it hit harder than he expected. He rubbed his temples. "You're bold for someone who works for me." "I'm desperate," she said softly. "For them. They're all I have left, too." He looked at her sharply. "What do you mean, all you have left?" Maria hesitated, then exhaled. "I never told you, sir, because it wasn't my place. But before I came here, I had a son." His brow furrowed. "Had?" She nodded slowly. "He died when he was 4. Pneumonia. I couldn't afford the treatment. I worked double shifts, cleaned until my hands bled, but I was too late." Her voice broke and she pressed her hand against her mouth. "When I took this job, I told myself I'd never get attached again. But your children, they reminded me of him. Their laughter, their questions, even their tantrums. I couldn't help it." Ethan's throat tightened. "I wasn't trying to replace anyone," Maria continued, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was trying to save them from the same emptiness that killed me." He stared at her, the weight of her confession sinking deep. For the first time, he saw her not as an employee, but as a mother. A broken one. Just like him. The silence stretched, heavy and raw. Finally, he spoke. "You should have told me. I was afraid you'd send me away," she whispered. "And I couldn't bear losing them, too." He looked down at his glass, the amber liquid trembling in his grip. "You think I'm that cruel?" "No," she said gently. "I think you're human. And humans break when they've lost too much." He closed his eyes. "You talk like you know me." "I've watched you long enough to understand," she said softly. "You love them. You just forgot how to show it." Her words hit deeper than any accusation. He let out a long, tired sigh. "Maybe I did." When he opened his eyes again, she was still there, not defiant, not afraid, just present. "You're good with them," he said quietly. Maria smiled faintly. "They're good kids." He studied her a long moment. "And what about me? What am I?" She hesitated, then said, "A man who still doesn't know how much his children adore him." He laughed softly, a sound that felt foreign in his own mouth. "You always say the right thing, don't you?" "No," she said, eyes glistening. "Just the truth." The next morning, Ethan woke to the sound of laughter again. But this time it didn't sting. He followed the noise to the kitchen. Maria was cooking breakfast, the triplets seated at the table covered in syrup and smiles. "Good morning, Daddy," Ava chirped. He smiled genuinely for the first time in a long while. "Good morning, sunshine." Maria turned, startled to see him awake so early. "Sir, he raised a hand gently. "Relax, I'm not here to argue." She nodded, nervously flipping a pancake. The children chatted happily, telling him about their royal breakfast tradition. He listened, really listened, for the first time. And when Maria spilled a bit of syrup on the counter, he grabbed a towel and helped clean it up. She froze. "You don't have to." "I know," he interrupted softly, "but maybe I should." Their eyes met for a moment, something unspoken passing between them. Not romance, but understanding. Later that day, after the children went to play outside, Ethan found himself walking through the hall again. He stopped by the mantel where the photo still stood. He picked it up carefully, studying the faces, Maria and his children, their smiles bright and genuine. He didn't put it away. Instead, he reached into a drawer and took out another frame, a photo of his late wife. He placed it beside the newer one, two families. One broken, one healing, both his. When Maria saw it later, her eyes filled with tears. "You kept it," she whispered. "I realized something," he said. "My wife would have wanted them to keep smiling, and you gave them that." She bit her lip. "I didn't do it alone," he smiled faintly. "No, you didn't." For the first time in years, the mansion felt like home again. Not because it was perfect, but because the emptiness had finally started to fade. That night, as he tucked the triplets into bed, Noah asked softly, "Daddy, are you staying this time?" Ethan hesitated, then smiled. "Yes, buddy, I'm staying." Ava grinned sleepily. "Good, 'cause Maria says families should never stop trying." He glanced toward the door where Maria stood, smiling quietly. "She's right," he said, "and I think we're finally trying again." As the lights dimmed, he stood beside her in silence, both watching the children drift to sleep. For the first time, they weren't two people on opposite sides of grief. They were simply two souls who had been broken in different ways, and somehow, in caring for the same children, had started to heal each other. Outside, the night was calm. The storm had passed, but inside that house, something new had begun to grow, slowly, quietly, and beautifully. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Ethan Cole had known before. For once, the mansion wasn't a cold monument of marble and silence. It was alive again. The triplets filled it with laughter, footsteps, and chaos that somehow made the air feel lighter. The halls echoed not with loneliness, but with life. And Ethan, the man who had once lived inside a wall of grief, began to rediscover pieces of himself he thought were gone forever. Each morning he joined them for breakfast. Each evening he read them stories before bed. And every night when he tucked them in, they asked the same question. "Daddy, are you still staying?" And every time his answer was the same. Yes, always. But it wasn't just his children he was learning to reconnect with. It was her, Maria, the woman he had once accused of overstepping, the one he'd nearly dismissed, now stood quietly beside him through every new attempt he made to be a father again. Sometimes she guided him gently. Sometimes she scolded him softly. But always she was there, steady, patient, unspokenly kind. And somewhere along the way, Ethan realized that her presence had become something he depended on more than he wanted to admit. One evening, after dinner, the children had fallen asleep early. The house was quiet except for the faint chirping of crickets outside. Maria was cleaning the kitchen, humming under her breath. Ethan lingered in the doorway, watching her. For months after his wife's death, he couldn't even walk into that room without feeling like the air had been stolen from his lungs. But now it was warm, filled with light, scent, and the sound of life again. "Maria," he said quietly. She turned, startled. "Oh, I didn't hear you come in, sir." He shook his head lightly. "You don't need to call me sir anymore. Ethan is fine." She hesitated, unsure if he was serious. I don't know if I can get used to that. Try, he said with a faint smile. She smiled back. Small, genuine. He stepped closer, the soft light from the chandelier catching the faint streak of gray in her hair. You've changed everything in this house. I just kept it running, she said. No, he said quietly. You kept it alive. Her eyes glistened, but she looked away. I only did what anyone would do. He shook his head. No one else would have done what you did, and not with the same heart. She blinked fast, swallowing emotion. They're good kids. They made it easy to love them. Still, he said softly, you didn't have to love them, but you did. The words hung in the air like something sacred. After a long silence, she said quietly, when you've lost love once, you recognize how fragile it is. I didn't want them to grow up never knowing what it feels like. He nodded slowly, his voice low. Neither did I. Their eyes met, not in romantic longing, but in mutual understanding. Two broken people who had finally stopped pretending they weren't hurting. The next morning, Ethan surprised everyone. He gathered the children in the living room, holding a box in his hands. What's that, Daddy? Asked Ava, her big brown eyes sparkling with curiosity. He smiled. Something we should have done a long time ago. He placed the box on the table and opened it. Inside were photo frames, blank ones. I realized something, he said softly. We have photos of everything in this house, vacations, meetings, parties, but not of us. Not of now, the children gasped excitedly. Are we taking pictures? He nodded. Family ones. All of us, Maria froze. Oh, I don't think... Ethan cut her off gently. You're part of this family, Maria, whether you admit it or not. Her breath caught, eyes wide. I don't know what to say. Say cheese, Noah said with a grin. Everyone laughed, even her. That afternoon, the house filled with the sound of camera clicks and laughter. Ethan lifted the kids onto his shoulders. Maria stood beside him holding the smallest one. And the photographer captured something no money could ever buy. Peace. For the first time, there was no sadness behind Ethan's smile, just warmth. When it was over, he printed one of the photos immediately and handed it to Maria. This one's yours. She stared at it, her hands trembling slightly. I haven't taken a family photo in years. Well, he said, it's about time. But life, as it always does, tested them. A few days later, a man in a sharp gray suit arrived at the mansion. One of Ethan's old business partners, Jonathan Reed. He was there to discuss the merger Ethan had walked away from. But Jonathan wasn't blind. He noticed the changes immediately. You've gone soft, he said bluntly, eyeing the family photos on the wall. Since when do you play house? Ethan smirked. Since I realized it's worth more than every deal I ever signed, Jonathan scoffed. Careful, Cole. People like you don't get to have hearts. You have empires. Then maybe I don't want this empire anymore, Ethan said. Jonathan looked at him like he'd lost his mind. You're serious? Ethan nodded. Completely. That night he sat alone on the balcony thinking. For years he'd been the man who had everything but peace. Now for the first time he had peace, but he feared losing it. He turned when he heard soft footsteps behind him. Maria. You're thinking too loudly, she said, sitting beside him. He chuckled. Is that possible? With you? Always, he smiled faintly. I've been thinking about letting go of some things. The business. The noise. Maybe it's time I lived differently. She looked at him carefully. Are you sure? He nodded. For the first time, yes. You've worked for everything you have. And now I want to work for something that matters more. What's that? He looked at her, eyes gentle. Them, us, whatever this strange, beautiful thing we've built is. She smiled softly. You sound like a man who finally found home. He exhaled. Maybe I did. Months passed. Seasons changed. Ethan's decision to step back from his company shocked the media. Billionaire walks away from empire, the headlines read. He didn't care, the world could speculate all it wanted. Inside his mansion, his home, life had found rhythm again. The triplets were growing fast. They had messy hair, loud voices, and endless questions. And Maria, she had become more than the maid. She was their anchor, their laughter, their quiet strength. One evening, as the children played outside chasing fireflies, Ethan found Maria sitting on the porch steps, watching them, He joined her, sitting quietly for a while before saying, "You ever think about leaving?" She looked surprised. "Leaving?" "Yeah. When you first took this job. Did you ever plan to move on?" She thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No, I came here to take care of children. I didn't realize they'd end up taking care of me too." He smiled softly. "They did that for me too." She turned to him. "You've changed, Ethan." "I had to," he said. "Otherwise, I would have lost them, and myself." She smiled faintly. "You didn't lose either." He looked at her, eyes warm. "Thanks to you." That night, after the children went to bed, Ethan walked down the hallway and stopped in front of the mantel. 2 photos stood side by side. His late wife, radiant and alive, and the new one, Maria with the triplets, smiling under sunlight. He didn't see replacement anymore. He saw continuation. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "We're okay now." And somehow, he felt like his wife heard it too. The next morning, Ethan made breakfast himself, or tried to. The kitchen was a mess of burnt toast and laughter by the time Maria walked in. She stopped in the doorway, hands on her hips. "What on earth happened here?" He grinned sheepishly. "Breakfast surprise." She laughed, that same bright, effortless laugh that had changed the house. "Oh, it's a surprise, all right," the triplets cheered. "Daddy made pancakes." "More like blackened dough," Maria teased. Ethan handed her a plate anyway. "Try them. They're made with love." She took a bite and immediately winced, and a touch of charcoal. They both burst out laughing, the sound echoing through the house. Later that day, Ethan took the triplets and Maria to the park. The sky was clear, the grass soft beneath their feet. The children ran ahead, chasing each other, while Ethan and Maria watched from a distance. "They're happy," he said quietly. "They are," she agreed. He turned to her, his tone gentle. "You made that possible." She shook her head. "We did," he smiled. "Maybe you're right." They watched the children together, laughing, running, living, and for a brief, perfect moment the world was still. No grief. No guilt, no distance. Just love, not romantic love, not yet. Something purer. The kind born of shared pain, healing, and second chances. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in gold and rose, Ethan picked up the youngest triplet and spun her around. She squealed, laughter echoing across the park. Maria watched, smiling, and for the first time since losing her son, her heart didn't ache. It healed. Ethan caught her watching and smiled. "What?" She shook her head. "Nothing, just thank you." "For what?" "For letting me stay." He looked at her, eyes kind. "No, Maria, thank you for coming home." The breeze carried their laughter away into the glowing sunset, a sound that, once upon a time, neither of them thought they'd ever hear again. And for the first time in a long, long time, Ethan Cole's mansion wasn't just a house, it was a family.